Welcome, everybody, to the Winner's Circle Sports Betting Channel. I'm your host, Ross Benjamin of the Winner's Circle Sports Betting Podcast. Before we get started, today is Monday, September the 11th, and our hearts and prayers and thoughts go out to all those individuals, family, and friends that lost loved ones on this date on 2001, one of the most, if not the most tragic event that ever happened in our country. We lost over 3,000 people, brave men and women, innocent men and women as well on that tragic day. So without further ado, Doug, how you doing today?
This is always an unbelievable day. And, even though there was lots of football and stuff like that, I made a specific effort to either seek out or shows that I have not seen about 9/11 to watch and to I don't know about you, if you watched any or anybody, watched any of those shows, all those feelings come rushing up, again, just like they did 22 years ago. And so from that standpoint, but no, these people, and as time goes on, you realize even more and more how much heroes there are, especially in today's climate where the word hero is thrown out a little too easy. These people were true heroes, in that regard. So yeah, it's a day, but it's also a day where for those people they've moved on, okay, and losing the loved ones and. Hey, they're to be congratulated for everything that they've done, and many of those have come up with support where they've developed other programs off of it that either help other people or something like that. So it's just a very emotional type day that way.
It certainly is, and everybody seems. I mean, especially if you're an adult, you seem to. I can't imagine that you don't remember where you were at that exact moment when you first heard of that news. So. Again, folks, prayers and thoughts go out to all those individuals who were affected by those tragic events on 9/11/2021. All right. By the way, folks, I forgot to introduce Doug. Again, my mind was elsewhere at the time, but this is Mr. Doug Upstone of DocSports.com. He's been a regular guest with me since almost the inception of our show, and Doug, we saw an interesting weekend in college football and the NFL. Some general observations that I took a look at yesterday is 11 of the 15 games went under the total. So the sports books, in my estimation, did pretty good on that end because it's well known the general public loves the bet overs. Also, the home teams went 5-10 straight up and 3-12 against the spread yesterday. So, and I shouldn't say just yesterday, but the Thursday game included with Kansas City and Detroit. So, your general thoughts in terms of what we saw yesterday, specifically in the NFL?
Yeah, the thing that probably stuck out to me more than anything else, and is not really, it relates to betting, but it wasn't, it's not directly attributed to betting. Once again, the lack of cohesiveness in the offenses by the lack of playing together in the preseason showed. Okay. I mean, it's just by not playing, these offenses are rough shape, because the one thing that you notice right away, and I'm sure you've seen this, Ross, tackling is desire and also technique. Okay. And so these guys have the technique down. They might not tackle a lot in the preseason, but they know what they have to do. They've developed different ways of doing it. Running patterns, catching a ball, blocking and runner going, those are different skills. Okay, completely different skills, in fact. And so you can see the tackling was still quite crisp. Oh, sure, there was some ones that wasn't great, but these offenses, boy, there's some really lousy offensive football, even with some close games in some cases. So that was kind of my biggest takeaway, from what I saw. And I have to say, though, it's not easy to be a Bear fan yesterday. Just when you finally thought you're rid of Rodgers and Favre for 31 years of seeing them at home, here you go. You thought, this is my chance.
Yeah, they got a lot of love, but it wasn't the kind they were looking for.
Exactly.
Anyway, I agree with you. Again, we saw a lack. Here's the thing: in this day and age, too, with free agencies and players changing teams, and and veteran players getting dropped because of salary cap issues and moving on elsewhere. It's imperative from an offensive standpoint, all to the points that you just made, that you get some work on the field, or it's going to take time to gel. And we saw it yesterday. And I equate it to this. I mean, pitching being ahead of hitting during the spring training of baseball, so and going into the regular season, I should say, hitters, they get very few at bats if they're a regular in the spring training, and pitchers only need a few innings of work during spring training to really hone their skills and hone their game and their mechanics. So we saw it firsthand yesterday. And boy, one team I know that was not hindered by a lack of play in the preseason offensively was the Miami Dolphins. I mean, Tua had just a tremendous game, much to my chagrin yesterday. Doug, you score 34 points, meaning the Chargers. You get over 200 yards rushing on offense, and you lose the game. So I went into my database because I was very perturbed, because that was my top play yesterday. And teams that score exactly 34 points at home since 1980 have won over 87% of the time and covered close to 82%, just a shade under 82%. But, you got to give him credit. Tua was right on. And, the other part of that equation is, where was Joey Bosa yesterday? Where was the San Diego pass rush that had been so good and was so revered going into the season? Tua, I don't think, has to wash his uniform, because they barely laid a hand on him. But to his credit, again, he passed for, I think, 479 yards, something stupid like that. It was the second most passing yards in a season opener by any NFL quarterback in the history of the league. Any thoughts in that regard, Joe?
Yeah, I'm high on this team, Ross, and I have been, since back in July. I think this team is if anything, it's underrated from that standpoint. I like their offense is dynamic. I mean, you throw the ball the hill, if you put any air under it, and if he gets one step on a guy, he's gone. I mean, he's going to catch the ball. Tua is a great passer. Okay, if anybody doesn't believe that, the only seeming problem that he has is just staying healthy. So if he can avoid the hits, okay. The other thing too, Chargers. I mean, okay, got Kellen Winslow to run the offense. Or not Kellen. I can't think of his name. Kellen Moore. Sorry. To run the offense. But who's running the defense? The defense is the same old thing, Ross. They try to just rush the passer. They're undisciplined in the back end. Okay, linebackers overrun plays continually. It's just the same thing with this coach. And so I don't think much is going to change. Maybe it will. And of course, we can all overreact for week one. But I really think the Dolphins are going to be a threat. I think their defense will play better as the season goes along. San Diego. The Chargers got a great offense, so it was a fun game for sure to watch. But I'm not surprised at all. In fact, I took the Dolphins yesterday. I think they're a very good team. I think they'll be a really good team all year long this year.
Yeah, well, I'm not crying over spilled milk, because you don't deserve to win the game when you give up as many yards as they did yesterday as well. My concern for Miami over the long haul is they faced a team that only averaged 87 yards rushing per game last year, which was near the bottom of the league. And they gave up, I believe, over 220 yards or thereabouts yesterday on the ground. And I didn't think Justin Herbert looked that solid yesterday. He looked exactly what you described in our opening. A quarterback that wasn't on the field enough during the preseason, with veteran wide receivers that weren't on the field enough during the regular season. And from a passing standpoint, it didn't look right for the Chargers. But we'll see. I mean, you can't overreact, right, Doug? You can't overreact in week two, what you saw in week one, because if you do, you're going to lose a lot of money. Anyway, college football, Texas knocks off Alabama. I don't know how big a surprise that was. I guess beating Alabama at home, considering they hadn't lost in forever and a day in a non-conference home game. But boy, oh boy, quarterback from Texas just looked absolutely spectacular. and the young man from Alabama looked inexperienced in that game, Milrose. So Melrose or Milrose is it? But in any event, Doug, your thoughts on what you witnessed in college football this past week?
Well, besides that, one of the things I can't help but ask the question is Alabama will still have a really good season. Okay, I think we can assume that, but is Alabama any longer a true national contender? I'm going to throw that out there, and I'm going to go with the answer of no. Okay, right now, Nick Saban, great coach, obviously the best college coach there has ever been, but nothing lasts forever, Ross. We know that. And, he's Georgia has set the new standard. Obviously, others are on the rise. To lose a game like that, the athletes in the game, that was the thing that caught my eye. Alabama had no advantage whatsoever against Texas of the athletes that were on the field.
Or team speed, right, Doug? The team speed,
yeah.
usually they have a big advantage, and I didn't see it.
Nope. And their secondary is young. Okay. But that's come up before. And usually they've had game plans for that. They had no answer when they were able to get single coverage and their cornerbacks or safeties, whatever, however they did it, they were exposed. So I think this is just kind of the beginning of the end. Again, I'm not saying Alabama's done. I'm not saying we're looking at a 5-5 or a 6-16 this year. I'm not saying anything like that. I just don't think right now what I'm seeing, and then also based on last year, that what we're used to seeing from Alabama, we're going to see that specifically going forward again. I might be wrong, and I'll eat crow on it. That's not a problem at all. And speaking of that, though, too, Ross, what about the SEC as a whole this past weekend against fellow FBS competition? They went 6-2, but they were only 1-7 against the spread. And the one cover was Mississippi, who did not face Tulane's regular starting quarterback.
And they were very lucky. They were very lucky. As a matter of fact, that game was much closer than the final score would indicate. Yes. They picked up a scoop and score near the end there. It was basically a 3-point game in the fourth quarter. So it's not like they dominated the game. And Tulane moved the ball even with their backup quarterback. So good points, Doug. And took a lot of heat, Doug. I don't think I did that show with you. I think it was with Jesse and Sean. But I took Cal plus the points against Auburn, and the SEC fans and Auburn fans come out of the woodwork, and I had to hear about the transfer portal and the different head coach. Folks, again, if you concentrate too much on players when it comes to sports betting, you need to play fantasy because it's all incorporated in the line. If you know about it, and I know about it, and Doug knows about it, and Jim Quinn knows about it, and Seth knows about it, then, you don't think the odds makers know? Come on. Enough already with that. Anyway, California lost 14-10, but covered as a 6.5-point favorite. Auburn.
So go ahead.
Go ahead.
I watched the entire game. Yeah. So
Auburn. Would they have around 250 yards of total offense in that game?
Yeah, and most of that came late. They did nothing the entire game, and Cal missed 3 field goals. And I forget how many. I want to say they ran inside the 25-yard line. I believe they ran like 26 plays inside the Auburn 25-yard line and did nothing. They should have won the game by 10 points. Forget anything else. They should have won the game by 10 points. They end up losing by just 4. To that end, it was an easy win. And like I said, I was with you on Cal as well. And the Pac-12, Ross, continues to shine.
Yeah.
And
how about that?
Thing people should pay attention to, and this will be also the case when they start playing each other, is the difference in the Pac-12 this year. And it's been coming, but the coaching has evolved in that conference, and there's more physical football being played in the Pac-12 right now than any time I can remember, I'm at least in the last decade. And that's the difference why that conference is better this year.
I agree, Doug. A perfect example of that is I had Washington State plus the points against Wisconsin. They win the game outright. And because I watched the whole game, I could just testify to that particular matchup. where Wisconsin, normally a team that beats you up physically in the interior, that wasn't the case against Washington State. Not exactly. Washington State's right now a team that's looking for a conference, them and Oregon State. So kudos goes out to them. So interesting week in college football and the NFL, and it'll be more intriguing as the season moves on. But anyway, let's get to the games at hand we're going to talk about today. Doug is going to look at Kansas State at Missouri, talking about a Southeast Conference team in Missouri who wasn't very impressive last week, while K-State looks every bit the part of a top 15 team. And then I'm going to look at Minnesota and North Carolina. Let's start with you, Doug. Right now, Kansas State is a 5-point favorite in this contest. This game kicks off at noon Eastern time. It'll be played in Columbia, Missouri, home of the Missouri Tigers, with Kansas State being a 5-point chalk on the road here. What do you got for us, buddy?
Well, this game's going to be on the SEC network as well, and both teams are coming in 2-0. But one difference between the records is that Kansas State is 2-0 against the spread, and the Tigers of Mizzou have failed to cover against South Dakota and Middle Tennessee State. That adds some attention to look for here. Now, Missouri only beat the Blue Raiders by 4 points last week as a 21-point home favorite, but I think you can make a case, okay, at least in theory, that they were looking ahead to this week, taking on a team that they used to be a conference foe against in Kansas State. And last year, Kansas State hammered them 40-12 at the Little Apple, okay, in Manhattan, Kansas. And they were a touchdown underdog in that one. Now, from a handicapping perspective, Ross, I'm looking at saying, okay, got a home dog here, okay, getting more than a field goal. You have to look a little harder here. So with the line, what it is, I power rate Missouri at 3.5 at home. Okay, I power rate Kansas State 4 at home. So if you take those two numbers and you take last year and you incorporate it to this year. Now, granted, they are different teams, but still, just from a comparison standpoint, actually Missouri should be favored, okay, in the game, ever so slightly. But and so if this is on a neutral field, though, Kansas State would be a larger favorite than what they currently are. So that tells me the odds makers, Ross and I like to talk a lot about the odds makers and different things that they do. And so from that perspective, Kansas State is being said as the better team. Now, in this one, Eli Drinkwater, the Missouri coach, he's 5-2 as a home underdog with his team, which the role will be in. But guess what? Chris Kleinman of Kansas State, this is his fifth time for an opener. So he's in his fifth season. So for a road opener, he is 4-0 straight up and against the spread in his first road game or neutral site game. And in 3 of them, he won on the road twice at Oklahoma as an underdog. He won at Mississippi State as an underdog, and he won by 17 on a neutral site game against Stanford. Now, the total of 46 suggests a lower scoring game, and these are 2 strong defenses, Ross, which I know you're certainly aware of. But there appears to be a greater difference at the quarterback position and the offenses. Will Howard, I like him as a quarterback for Kansas State. Brady Cook, limited knowledge of him, but haven't been impressed certainly with what I've seen in terms of his results thus far. So as much as I'd like to take the home dog in this one, Ross, I'm looking at the purple and silver here. My power ratings say they should be favored by 7.5 to 10 points. I say they come up with a score in the fourth quarter of a tight game. Put it away to cover the spread. Give me K-State to get the job done against Missouri in Columbia Saturday afternoon.
All right, so Doug Upstone likes Kansas State minus the 5 at Missouri on Saturday. Again, folks, that game goes at noon Eastern time. And no, SEC fans, we're not. It's not a conspiracy against you guys. It's just we're picking games against the spread. In this particular instance, I would hope that even people from the SEC and their followers would understand how good a team Kansas State is fundamentally. They don't beat themselves. And Will Howard is not a quarterback that SEC fans are going to look at and clamor and say, I wish he was here with us, because he doesn't really wow you. He's just efficient. He's smart. And Kansas State They're just a physical team that plays very fundamentally sound on both sides of the ball. By the way, folks, we are sponsored by Gamblers World. And if you go to our .com portion of the site, that's where you'll find all the videos. When you go to your .net portion of our site, that's where you'll find 10 of the finest handicappers you'll find anywhere in the country. Yes, we do charge for our premium picks, but we do give you our guarantee that if you don't make a profit, you don't win on a single game or multi-game daily package or any subscription plan of 30 days or less, your money will be refunded to your account, credited, I should say. Let me correct that, refund and credit. I don't know why I keep getting that confused, but it's an important difference. We will credit your account the exact amount of your purchase price. So there you have it. Don't forget, you'll find not only myself, but 9 other great handicappers over there at gamblersworld.net. Also, folks, if you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, you'll see a WC logo in the bottom right-hand corner of your video box. If you're watching on a PC, just click on that. It's 100% free to subscribe. There's no hidden agenda. There's no mandatory subscription plan in terms of length. And again, folks, everybody likes something free, and you're privy to some of the finest handicapping information you'll find anywhere on the internet today. Also, if you're on your mobile device, which most of you are, you'll see a black subscribe button right there underneath your video box. Click on that. That'll get you subscribed. And I'm going to ask you to go one step further. Go into your YouTube settings and hit that notification alert bell for the Winner's Circle Sports Betting channel. You'll be notified immediately upon any of our podcasts being posted on our channel. All right, Doug, I'm going to take a look at Minnesota and North Carolina. North Carolina right now is a 7-point home favorite. The total in this game is 49, which is extremely low for a North Carolina game, by the way. This is a Minnesota team that started the season 2-0, but to me, they've been sort of listless in doing so. I mean, it looked like a pretty good win against Nebraska in their season opener, 13-10. But keep in mind, they were behind in that game with less than 3 minutes to play, 10-3, and they overcame that deficit to win in regulation time. And guess what? Nothing new to Nebraska fans. The Cornhuskers found a way to lose that game by self-destructing, and that's exactly what happened in that game. And then Nebraska goes to Colorado last week and gets blown out. So all of a sudden, that took a lot of the luster off that win for Minnesota. And then last week, they fell short of covering the number at a 25-6 win at home against Eastern Michigan. And now they're going on the road for the first time this season. They'll be facing a North Carolina team that they were in a little bit of a letdown spot last week. Double-digit home favorite against in-state rival App State. And Doug, as you well know, App State, it's a lot bigger game to them when they take on the brand name of North Carolina. And you know, they gave them all they can handle, but North Carolina, got to give them credit. They hung in there and they won the game 40-34 in overtime. And I say a letdown spot because their opening game was at a neutral site in Charlotte against South Carolina, who's led by a very good quarterback in Spencer Rattler. And the Tar Heels came away with a 31-17 win in that game. North Carolina has not turned the ball over in the first 2 games. Minnesota, on the other hand, has committed 3 turnovers. Also, since 2020, North Carolina is 6-0 straight up and 5-1 against the spread as a home favorite versus an opponent like Minnesota, coming off back-to-back straight-up wins. The average line in those 6 games was 9.9, and they outscored their opponents in those 6 games by a total of 15.8 points per game on average. North Carolina has played, in my estimation, a tougher schedule of the 2 teams, with the Tar Heels taking on South Carolina and App State, while Minnesota takes on Eastern Michigan and Nebraska. And at the end of the day, when all else is, with everything else being equal, Doug, the big difference in this game is at quarterback. Drake May is an NFL quarterback playing college football right now. This guy If you look at his numbers last year, over 4,300 yards passing, 68% completion rate. He's began the season hitting 71% of his pass attempts. He's also a mobile quarterback that could beat you with his legs. And I am going to take the North Carolina Tar Heels here. I'm going to lay the 7 against Minnesota and PJ Fleck. Doug, your thoughts?
Okay. Well, I actually have a question for you, Ross, to start before I say anything. Do you think the line, are you surprised the line 7? Do you think it should be higher or no?
Just because of what we saw last week and Minnesota being so good on the road under PJ Fleck over the last couple seasons, I thought it was a pretty fair line in myself. So, again, your thoughts?
I think the line's low. I think it's at least 2 points off. I think North Carolina should be upwards of at least 9 in this case. Because I mean, look at that Minnesota. They brought in new offensive coordinator. They're going to start throwing the ball more, and they're going to be more explosive. Well, you got 38 points to show for against Nebraska and Eastern Michigan. That's not an explosive offense to me. They fall behind. Let's just say they cough the ball up once or something happens. North Carolina goes and scores opening drive. Also, then they turn the ball over. It's 14-0. That game's over, Ross. Okay. I mean, I've been to Chapel Hill for football. It's actually a really nice place to watch a football game. Great stadium. But the thing, I mean, they could just blow them right out of the water right away. And I think last week, like you said, App State, it's a bigger game for them. No question. I think North Carolina was flat. They showed what kind of defense they're capable of playing. Now that's always the capable in doing. You still have to show the results on the field. I think they're going to really dismantle this team. And if they don't win by 2 touchdowns in this one, I will be absolutely surprised. I think Minnesota is definitely in over their head. And even though they can be the more physical team, I think North Carolina comes to play and buries them.
Well, what does your power rating say in this game, Doug? I mean,
I have now that one I haven't gotten to yet. I scrambled just to get the one that I have here.
Yeah, gotcha.
But from that standpoint, I would assume that it's going to be somewhere in the 10 to just off the top of my head, 7 to 10 point range. So yes.
All right. So I'm going to take North Carolina minus a 7 over Minnesota. Doug Upstone likes Kansas State minus 5 on the road over the Missouri Tigers. Doug, tell the folks how you've been doing of late and what you may have coming up.
Yes. I have one. I outsmarted myself, Ross, over the weekend. And I don't know if you do this. I actually had Rice at plus 10 and they fell to 9.5 and actually went down from there. I jumped off because I couldn't get the 10. Rice won the game going away. So that was my one error. That prevented me from having a winning weekend because of that, because the game I took in his place didn't win. So that didn't work out so well. But hey, we move ahead to this week. And so a lot of good things going on, though. And props. I had some NFL props over the weekend. Won those. Baseball props, red hot. 20-6 in props right now, Ross, on a run. So just killing it on those right now across the board. So looking for just to keep that going, both in baseball and in football. And if I'm going to stick with NFL only on props, I'm not going to do college this year. Too many variables, at least to me. Canadian football, Ross, big 6-unit winner there. I know you're going to talk about that, but I want to talk because I'm 11-5. So yeah, of course I want to talk about that. And then Major League Baseball, the 44-28, the last 6 weeks from that game. And tonight, if you happen to see this video on Monday before the first Monday Night Football game, I have a play on the Jets and Buffalo available, 4-unit play going today. So if that's of interest to you, you can jump in and check that one right out there. Ross, I know you got something to say. Have at it, my friend.
Thank you, Doug. I also have a play on the Jets and Bills game tonight. If you see this in time at gamblersworld.net, just $25, folks. In my NFL September record, even though I didn't fare well so far in week 1, is somewhere around 64% against the spread since 2010. The good news on Saturday in college football is let's go backwards. 2-2 in college football on Saturday. The good news is I won my 5-unit top play of the week on Miami of Florida plus the points, as they won outright by 15 over Texas A&M. The bad news is I went against Oregon and
Oh.
the Oregon gets a pick six with 42 seconds to go to cover and beat me. So one of those tough losses that's really a big swing of momentum, and that was against Texas Tech, by the way. So it is what it is, and we move on. But you can find all my picks at gamblersworld.net. Like I said, NFL is September NFL since 2010, absolutely on fire. College football, 22-13 since December 3rd of last year. That's good for 63%. My Major League Baseball since August 4th, 61% winners. So a lot of good things happen at gamblersworld.net. Don't forget to subscribe. And folks, you'll see a like button right underneath us. And I'm not going to do a Jesse Schule on you and tell you to smash it at the top of my voice. He's the only one who's allowed to do that on this channel, and he does it very well. So I don't want to take his show away. So in any event, hit that like button, folks. Just a small token of your appreciation for the work, preparedness, and research we do to make you a smarter sports bettor today than you were yesterday. For Doug Upstone and Ross Benjamin, we'll see Doug back on Thursday with Kyle Hunter. By the way, last Thursday, another 3-0 day with myself, Kyle, and Doug. That makes 2 weeks in a row on a Thursday, 6-0 the last 2 weeks. You don't want to miss that show. You don't want to miss tomorrow morning's show as well, as I'll be back with Jesse Schule and Sean Higgs. And then tomorrow afternoon, I return again with Paul Bovey and Chip Chirimbus. We'll be taking a look at a couple of NFL games for you. Don't miss the action, folks. And don't forget, subscribe and like Winner's Circle Sports Betting channel. Until the next time, take care and God bless.